And Siddhartha Cal 1, thank you so much for being here. Says Soros is clever. People think POTUS can change things. Soros hacked the structure of our bureaucracy.
He did.
Oh no, that one you can talk about. I'm looking at other questions now. I want you to be responsive to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I have tremendous respect for Soros. I think you can just learn a lot from someone like that. He's an oligarch. And I think one thing, that's, if not redemptive, at least kind of, partially acceptable about him is that he is a worthy competitor. He's someone who is actually serious, and he has depth, and he really is an oligarch in the truest sense. And I think you can learn so much by reverse engineering everything that he's done. And you mentioned something very important called, what did you call it? The activist complex, the
industrial activist complex.
Right. And he's really created this. And there's this whole infrastructure that exists with interconnections between civil society groups and government and on the ground kind of activists and the media that he's created, that he's able to leverage through his control of NGOs, of State Department, and his political allies. This whole kind of ecosystem and how it functions is something that is really important, really sophisticated, and must be reverse engineered, and it especially along all of the dimensions in which there are these cross integrations, and it serves so many functions. And one of the simplest functions is that if you are aligned with Soros, there are so many jobs that were available through his various outfits that simply being able to employ people who are on your side through this vast kind of patronage network, even that is not nothing. I'm not suggesting that's sort of the principal source, but that's such a simple thing that doesn't even really exist on the right. And I think that people on the right are wondering, why do we always kind of lose? Well, the first step is really reverse engineering what Soros has done with his various networks and how they function. And they're deeply integrated into these Atlanticist NGOs that I've described, like the National Endowment for Democracy, the Atlantic Council, and so forth, which is in turn connected to the State Department and various other government groups. So understanding the linkages between those institutions is very important, and it's worthy of tremendous.
So when you think of these things, do you, and I try and think of these things as kind of living organisms, right? So I try not, it's not like, when I think of Soros, and I like Soros, by the way, but I don't think of him as evil or good. I just think of him as kind of like, if it's a living organism, I think about him maybe as a kidney or something, it takes up room in my body, but I really like it there. So, but again, I just look at these things as a living organism. There's a lot of complexity to these things, right? When you think of these things, do you think of them in terms of evil or I don't want to say Soros is evil because none of us are going to agree, hopefully, that he's an evil person, complex person, right? He's a proxy for the government. But do you think of these people as kind of their intentions are pernicious and malicious? How do you kind of think of people like Soros, and I would even include probably Paul Singer within that, or the Kochs, or just kind of that whole apparatus of the oligarchs?
Well, I think it would diminish. Let's put it this way. No great villain would think of himself as being evil. I don't think you can be a great villain if you think of yourself as being evil, because I think that's a very limited.
How do you think of them? I'm very interested in when you think of Soros, and I know that there's been a lot of writing about it in Revolver .news, and I remember Revolver when I was telling everyone that they got to check it out because it's going to grow, and you guys are doing fantastic things, really some brilliant stuff. Some of your stuff is actually in my Chronicle, right? I had to download
our interview with Julian Assange's fiance.
I did. So the thing I'm very interested in is, how do you kind of build your mental model of someone like Soros? Do you give him some type of attributes in terms of a personality or properties in terms of intentions, good or evil? Or how do you kind of think of these things?
Well, I mean, I think that he represents a power structure that has been, I think, pernicious, uh, and it's not so much. I think there is a moral dimension, and I think Soros is responsible for great evil. And I wouldn't hesitate to call him evil, but I wouldn't reduce him. I wouldn't reduce him to evil, but I would call him evil because he has promoted precisely those disruptive mechanisms that ruin the capacity for a healthy and functioning
But
society.
there has to be a cruelty just in governing, right? And
Right. And so I don't simply, I understand that anyone, in order to govern, will have to take certain measures that an ordinary person would consider perhaps morally questionable. I'm not someone who has this pristine view that power can be innocent, but I think power has to be judged in relation to its net effects. And I do not think that the net effects of what Soros has been promoting have been positive. And I think you could look at it from his point of view as to what exactly is he, running away from, what is his underlying psychology. But ultimately, I find that less interesting than his sophistication in terms of the apparatus that he was able to build, which I admire. I admire his willingness and capability to play for keeps, as does Paul Singer. And you see anyone on our side willing or able to play for keeps, and I think that that needs to be changed. But I do think ultimately you have to judge Soros by the fact that he's associated with a power structure and the promotion of a culture and a society that is essentially ugly. It is an ugliness that he's promoted in the world, and he's simply responsible for that, and that is evil.
I would say with some of these oligarchs that they don't have kind of the Medici type of Florence, their love of their Florence people. They don't have the common good. They don't have that love of their own people, and they just have the cruelty, right? So they have the cruelty that's essential for a great ruler, but they don't know even how to be good. So I don't think their cruelty is kind of well used, and we've discussed that in terms of cruelty.
I think that's well put, and cruelty can be necessary for great things. Cruelty can be, or at least destruction can be necessary for great things. Cruelty suggests an element of excess that may or may not be necessary, but certainly you need to, as they say, break eggs to make an omelet. But I judge Soros by the omelet, and the omelet is disgusting and rotten.
Well, so it's going to be interesting. You and I were discussing right before this, and a lot of us, you're young, you're 35, I'm